Meeting will now come to order. We are now holding the November monthly meeting of the Fayette County School Corporation Board of School Trustees. At this point, I'm going to turn our meeting over to Mrs. Williams for a presentation.
Thank you so much for having Eastview School this evening. These are some members of our student council, and we will open your meeting like we open every day at Eastview Elementary.
Good evening. Today is Tuesday, November 12th, 2013. My name is Katie.
And I'm Brooklyn. Please stand for a moment of silence. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please say it with us. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now please say with us the Eagle Pledge. I am the eagle. I do my best at all times and all places. I am safe, respectful, responsible, and proud. I honor my family, my teachers, and myself by the good choices I make. I am strong, clean, and trustworthy. I am the eagle. Watch me soar. You may now be seated.
At Eastview, we have a motto: be safe, be respectful, be responsible, be proud. This month, we are focusing on be proud. Thank you for letting us show our pride in Eastview tonight.
At this time, I'd like to thank our student council members for coming this evening. And I hope you enjoyed their presentation of the data walls that we've begun outside of our classrooms, and a little motivation there so kids know where they are and what things they need to work on. So thank you very much. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
I was going to say thank you, parents, for coming and bringing your children. And as I see you're leaving, which this is a good time to do that. See ya. Bye.
Hope to see you next year. All right.
Carl, I don't know about that for your coat.
Yeah, I was going to say, but that's all.
We'll let you see what you want to wear.
Good.
I'm a die-hard Bobby Knight fan. What? Die-hard Bobby Knight fan. Always have been, always will be.
He's a real winner.
I can't help it. I support him 100%.
In the spring of 2012, we received a request from Mr. Stephen Becker to conduct a study at Eastview Elementary, and Dr. Clay did approve that request. And last year he made several visits to our building, and those students who had signed permission slips were included in this study. So at this time I'd like to introduce Mr. Stephen Becker.
Hi, good evening, everyone. You removed the shroud, Carrie. I'm sorry for you guys. And so I don't know what a data wall even is. I didn't get to see that, but I do love data as a researcher, and so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. So just like Mrs. Williams said, my name is Stephen Becker, and I'm a doctoral candidate in clinical psychology at Miami University, currently completing my last year of residency at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. And so a lot of my work as a clinical psychologist, a child psychologist, is not only working with kids and families, and my areas of interest and expertise are specifically in ADHD and sleep problems. But also I spend most of my time actually doing research, and that's one of the things I love to do. And so I was excited when the opportunity presented itself to be able to conduct a study in one of the Fayette schools at Eastview Elementary. So my goal tonight really is just to orient you all to the project broadly, to share some initial data that are actually currently under review for publication, and then also give you a sense of kind of other kind of projects we have underway with the data that teachers and students at Eastview provided. And so the study included students as well as their teachers in grades 1 through 6. So just because of reading level, kindergartners were not included in this study in terms of getting measures completed. And we did include 2 time points, both collecting data in the fall from both teachers and students, as well as in the spring. And really our interests were in academic functioning, obviously given that these are elementary school students, we care about that a lot, especially at school board meetings, I'm sure. And then also, obviously related to academic functioning, behavior absolutely relates, social adjustment relates, and then certainly mental health symptoms, psychopathology, clearly related to how well kids do in school, as well as outside of school. And so last year there were 280 total students at Eastview in grades 1 through 6, so again, excluding kindergartners. Of those, again, this study was certainly not only approved by Dr. Clay last year, but also by the Institutional Review Board at Miami, who oversees all research with human subjects. So consent forms were sent home to parents after the study was briefly described by myself, 2 students and teachers. 218 of the students brought their consent forms back, which is great. And then 189 of those, the parents actually said, yep, it's fine for my student to participate. The others declined, which is also completely, totally fine. And then obviously there's some what we call attrition, or some students move out of the district or other things happen between time point 1 in the fall and time point 2 in the spring. And so at the spring time point, we had about 176 students. And so I'm going to focus on some results that I wanted to present that I think are really actually pretty compelling. And so you can just see that the mean age of kids is right around 9 years of age, as you would expect. A really nice even split between just about half boys, half girls. Consistent with the area, the vast majority are non-Hispanic white students. And then also, we didn't have parents' complete measures in this study like we often do, and so we don't have actual SES or income information. But so what we do in a lot of our studies is use free or reduced lunch as a kind of a marker or a proxy of socioeconomic status. You can see that just over half fell into that classification. And so I'm not going to be able to present with the time that we have too many results tonight, and so I'm going to focus in on what I said are some pretty compelling results specifically related to sleep. So in a lot of my clinical work, not only within ADHD but also with parents more broadly, sleep is a very common clinical concern that comes up. It's something that we always ask about in our assessments, but it's actually something that pretty frequently parents will say, oh yeah, like sleep doesn't go well, or I don't really know because they're in their bedroom watching TV or that sort of thing. And sometimes parents realize that sleep is a problem, and sometimes parents almost are dismissing of it. I'm sure no parents in this room are, but sometimes they're dismissing that sleep really matters in terms of child adjustment. And so the results I'm going to present suggest otherwise. And so I was really interested in looking if kids report on their sleep functioning. So we know in the research literature, a huge number of studies have shown that parents' reports of sleep really matter in terms of how well kids are doing. But there are very, very few studies that have looked at kids' own reports of their sleep functioning. I was really interested in getting kids' report of sleep functioning because it's often hard to get parents across the board, all parents, to complete ratings or measures, or certainly not all parents by any means will ever see a child psychologist or a mental health professional. And so thinking, if child-reported sleep functioning measure can predict or matters in terms of how well kids are doing, well, that might be a way to actually start thinking about prevention and intervention. So thinking kids, by and large, are in school consistently in school age and into adolescence. And so maybe we can use kids' own reports of sleep functioning as a way to screen for kids who might be most at risk for more significant problems. And then also this, after controlling and accounting for demographics and mental health symptoms, what that's about is so we know that there are other risk factors in terms of social, academic, and behavioral adjustment, including poverty, including mental health symptoms like ADHD symptoms, anxiety, depression. We know that kids who are oppositional or have a lot of angry outbursts are more likely to be rejected by their peers, those sorts of things. And so I was really wanting to know, does sleep actually predict how well kids are doing across these domains, even after we control for all of those other things, so even after we take all of those things into account? And so kids completed a validated measure of sleep, a 13-item measure, that measures not only sleep habits, in terms of how long it takes them to fall asleep, or if they have a bedtime routine, but also sleep problems in terms of items such as, I think I sleep too little, or I think I sleep too much, or I need to be near someone in order to fall asleep. So for a lot of kids, needing to be near a parent, kind of a sleep associations is what we would call those. And then children also completed measures of academic adjustment, behavior, social acceptance, loneliness, and dyadic friendship. So loneliness and friendship satisfaction are really important because those are really best perceived by the child themselves. So teachers are awesome at rating if kids are overall rejected by their peers, or if they're having a hard time general in the social group or in the ecology of the peer domain, but might have a harder time knowing how that kid's doing in terms of their friendship with their best friend or loneliness. So those were the measures we collected from children. And then teachers completed, I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with the frequently used Vanderbilt ADHD diagnostic rating scale that pediatricians send all the time to teachers in terms of diagnoses of ADHD. And so the purpose of this study certainly wasn't to diagnose in any way any mental health condition, but really does allow us to look at inattentive, hyperactive, impulsive, anxious, and depressive symptoms along a continuum as opposed to a psychiatric diagnosis. And then teachers also completed measures of academic adjustment, behavior, and then various facets of social functioning that you can see there. All right, so here's a lot of numbers, and I realize there's probably a wide range of familiarity with statistics and that sort of thing, and I'm going in assuming none. And that's not to, I'm sure some of you have wonderful expertise, but we're just going to work from the ground floor. And so here we're looking at teacher-reported outcomes and scholastic competence. So teachers rating how well is this kid keeping up with their schoolwork, school demands, how are they learning. And so we see, so I'm just going to move over here to make this a little easier, sorry. So when I talked about including everything and accounting for other things, what that basically means is I'm going to put all of these things in a model together. And the way I describe it is it's basically like they're arm wrestling all in the model to see what's going to win. Okay, they're all playing a big giant tug of war. And so we know, so the ones that I bolded or have asterisks, that means in the final model, those are what we would call statistically significant, or they matter in terms of predicting our outcome at an above chance, greater than chance level. And so of course we know that ADHD and attentive symptoms are really strongly associated, negatively so, with how well kids are doing academically. Okay, there's about 1 billion studies that show that, and you all see that all the time in the work you do with kids. So what I want to know is after I control for age, sex of the child, free or reduced lunch status, as well as these mental health symptoms, does sleep matter? And you can see that sleep is still a significant predictor of teachers' ratings of scholastic competence. And so one of the things that's important here to note is that this is actually kids' ratings of their sleep predicting a teacher-reported outcome above and beyond demographics, as well as several teacher-reported mental health symptoms. And we know that a teacher's predicting teacher, that's much more likely to find a significant effect. And so the fact that we see kids' reports of sleep predicting above and beyond all that other teacher stuff is actually a pretty compelling finding. So I'm only going to show a couple of results and then talk about some general consistencies that we see. So then we see really the exact same pattern in terms of general social acceptance. So this is broadly how well these kids are accepted in the peer domain. We see that as kids rate their sleep being more poor or less than adequate, we see that that really matters in terms of how well teachers are perceiving these kids to be accepted within the peer group. And then we see the exact same pattern in terms of how well these kids are behaving in the classroom. So these are things like not getting into trouble, any sorts of things related to behavior. So those are our teacher-reported outcomes. I'm not going to show them, but we also show that sleep above and beyond all these other things is associated with proactive regression in terms of how teachers are reporting how much kids are planfully thinking about or willfully thinking about engaging in aggressive behaviors, as well as just general peer rejection. So really consistent results. Now we're going to move on to some child outcomes. So these are kids reported on their own scholastic competence. So again, teachers' reports of inattention, still a very strong predictor in terms of how well kids are thinking they're doing academically in school. But again, we see that sleep down here, above and all these other things, is still an important predictor of how well kids are doing in school. Same thing in terms of how well kids are thinking that how well are you behaving in school? How well are you doing? And then also, in terms of loneliness, again, sleep is actually the strongest predictor here of loneliness. Anxiety and depression, as you would expect, is also associated with loneliness. And I'm not going to present them, but the results were also the same in terms of global self-worth that we asked kids about, in terms of global self-esteem, as well as how well they're doing in just their dyadic friendship with their best friend. Sleep really mattered in terms of making those friendships or have less quality, poor quality, based on sleep functioning. And so as we expected, unfortunately we know that a lot of kids have a lot of different problems in school, and this kind of study really points to the importance of sleep in relation to that. So of course we know that things like ADHD, anxiety, depression are going to affect kids and how well they do at school, but this study points to not psychopathology per se, but really sleep functioning, which is something that's actually pretty, we do a lot of work in being pretty able to easily intervene on sleep functioning, and that these results suggest that improving sleep functioning by and large is going to improve how well kids are behaving in school, how well kids are doing socially and with their peers, and then how well they're doing academically in terms of their learning. And again, just like I mentioned before, the fact that the results were consistent across teacher and child models or reporters really bolsters the confidence that we can have that these results are, as well as we can see them very consistently across all the models we tested, bolsters the confidence that we have in these conclusions. So what does all of this mean? Like I said earlier, one of the things I'm really interested in from a clinical psychologist point of view is how do we prevent problems in the classroom or in peer relationships or in the social ecology, and then also when they do emerge, how do we best treat them? And so I think that these findings point to the importance of potentially using child-reported sleep functioning, self-reported, as a possible way to screen, because we know that the vast majority of kids who have sleep problems are unfortunately not going to be detected. Like I said, most of these families are never going to meet me in my office down at Children's. Pediatricians do screen, and there's a lot of variability in terms of how much they're able to or how well they do at screening for sleep problems. But even then, a lot of parents don't report knowing about, well, I don't know how long my kid's laying awake. Like, I put them in bed and they're just gone. Or I don't know if they're getting up in the middle of the night and having a hard time going back to sleep because that's their own experience and they're not there. So those were just a few results that I presented. One of the things that I did want to emphasize tonight is I've worked in a lot of schools and doing research projects, and I've seen a lot of research projects happen, and so it's very fun for me to come and present some results to you, because often it's not the case that as researchers we get to actually go back to the people who helped us learn this knowledge and be able to go back and thank them and present the results. And also an important part of our work is obviously disseminating and getting our results out there, not only to school board meetings and to other people that I work with, but also getting those into national conferences and publications. And so we actually have sleep results, some others that I didn't talk about tonight, as well as 2 other papers from the Eastview study specifically currently under review for publication. And I really just want to say that as a way to say thank you to not only the Eastview staff and students who answered our measures and hopefully had a good time doing that, but also that these results will be read kind of in the scientific literature and help us inform not only theory but also prevention and intervention efforts. And so I really do want to be sure to make sure that my thanks is extended. Certainly Dr. Talclay initially approved the study, as well as Mrs. Williams. But all of the teachers answered a whole lot of, I know that teachers already complete a ton of paperwork. We were able to pay them a little bit based on some funding that we had. But we do appreciate that the teachers were willing and able to complete the forms, as well as the students. I really think that they had a really nice time kind of completing some measures and getting answered questions about themselves. And we do obviously take their perspective very seriously. I also had about a dozen or so Miami University research assistants, undergraduates, that worked with me who helped manage all of the students when we would collect data and those sorts of things, as well as get data entered for analyses. So I want to thank them, as well as funding by the American Psychological Foundation, as well as the Department of Psychology at Miami. I know that I've probably already gone over how long I'm supposed to talk, but I'm happy to take any questions or if anyone were to have any. But thank you.
I do have one. You talked
Sure.
about both student reported and on sleep less than adequate, I think was the term that you used. But you really didn't talk about that until the very end a little bit. You talked about how long they took to fall asleep and whether they got it. I'm just kind of curious as to how, from a student perspective, you define less than adequate sleep.
Sure, yeah, so that's a great question. So what we did is this is a continuous measure of sleep functioning, is what this is. And so basically higher scores mean worse sleep. And so we did not categorize kids into bad sleepers or good sleepers. That would be for another paper for another day. And so with this measure, there's not actually, like I said, there's not a whole lot of research that has looked at kids' own reports of their sleep, and so really the research that's out there has been looking at it at like on a scale of 1 to 20 based on the responses they gave. So it's really at the higher end of the spectrum. Kids at that end tend to do worse, but we don't have a specific cutoff in terms of on the measure yet. In terms of if you score above this means you're most at risk or most likely to be rejected by your peers or to experience academic failure. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just trying to figure out how they would fill that scale out. I mean, what kind of questions? do
Sure,
they
so
ask?
yeah, so it's, so each question, there's 13 items, and it's on a 3-point scale. And it asks about how frequently each of the, how many nights a week. So I think the 0 response is 0 nights to 2 nights a week. A 1 would be 3 nights to 5 nights. And then a 2 would be almost every night, 6 to 7 nights a week.
Okay.
And then we just sum across those to get an index or a score of more sleep problems.
Thank you.
Sure. So everyone tell your kids to get good sleep. And thank you again for allowing me to come in and speak to you all.
Thank you, Mr. Becker, and if his name sounds familiar, he is the other half, I didn't say better, of our literacy coach, Joy Becker. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving along to, I hear a motion to approve the agenda as submitted or amended.
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Savoy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do I hear any patron comments on agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move on. Our consent agenda this evening covers approval of minutes from the regular business meeting of 10/8/13 and the executive minutes of 10/8/13. Our personnel report, which included retirements, resignations, leaves of absence, etc. And approval of October 2013 claims number 33283 and number 33622. Do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda items?
I'll make that motion, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Savoy. Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. Okay, moving into the action items. First, we have the personnel report. Dr. Bayer.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett, Dr. Hodges, members of the board. A couple persons for your consideration this evening. Those would be Holly Davis, a certified staff as a life skills teacher, retroactive to October 11th at Maplewood. Also Billy Poliak, temporary part-time special education assistant, also at Maplewood, effective October 31st. And in addition to that, on the flip side of your Friday materials and also on your board report, in your Friday letter, we provided you some background regarding a request to recognize a new group of administrators entitled operational leaders, and those would include the directors of technology, maintenance and grounds, magic moments, and transportation. And while these persons currently receive health, life, long-term disability, among other benefits, there are some provisions that do make them different from certified administrators or teachers. So as a result, currently this change would only impact the director of technology. The other 3 directors would be changed through any kind of attrition in the future. And by recognizing, I believe, their uniqueness and individuality, we can more appropriately compensate them for their leadership efforts. With that, I'd ask your consideration of the entire personnel report this evening, Mr. Burchett.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bayer. Do I hear a motion to accept the personnel report?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Spurlock. Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Any discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, we have policy updates, second and final reading. Dr. Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board, Last month, we had first reading on all these policies. The only question I think that there was going through was the policy in regards to possessing firearms on school property. The question was, can we make this more restrictive? And after talking to ISBA legal counsel and going back and reviewing what statute said, this is about as restrictive as we can make it. We can make it more liberal if we choose to, but I think the intent was to make it more restrictive. The only other changes that we've had since first reading, there were a couple editorial pieces trying to get all the wording consistent with Director of Human Resources, and so we've made those changes. Other than that, the policies, I think, remain the same as they did after first reading, and unless I hear some other comments, I'd consider the second reading, and I think you are ready to move for adoption of these policies. And when you do that, if you'd make part of your motion the fact most of these come from Section 3 of our policy manual, and the motion would be such that we could just update the review dates of all those policies to show 11/13. That would be helpful.
Okay, do I hear a motion to accept or to make these policy updates and changes effective 11/13? Do I hear? Yes, Ms. Shelton?
I move to approve the policy updates effective when
11/13.
13.
Right, thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Savoy. Are there any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Recommendation of purchase of a CHS dishwasher replacement. Ms. Tollett.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett. We have had some brief discussion last month regarding the dishwasher at the high school, and our initial go-around on receiving quotes put those over $80,000 a piece. So we asked Hobart, the dishwasher manufacturer, to go back and scale back the model of that and redesign the specifications. This in the last month, we sent out requests to 6 vendors for the actual dishwasher and its installation, with the lowest being Stafford Smith at $50,499.48. We've not had experience with Stafford Smith before. However, in contacting references around the Indianapolis area and Mr. Hilton's Purdue, who's done over $500,000 worth of dishwasher business in the last 6 years with them. Both Bob and Siobhan are satisfied that they believe they do a good job for us. So we are recommending Stafford Smith for the dishwasher, custom fabrication of the table, and the dishwasher installation. We're also recommending that Schaumels be approved for the roof. There's a cut and a curb that has to be installed on the roof at a price of $490, and the local electric and plumbing work that needs to be done in association with this project be awarded to Leighton Wood Electric at $5,528. The hope is to issue these purchase orders tomorrow and the work be completed over Christmas break. The combined total of the project is $56,517.48. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the project.
Is the Wood Electric, is that a local?
Yeah, Leighton's a local government.
Okay.
How often do those have to be replaced, just for curiosity? Do you know?
That one came with the building.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The freezer came
So
with the
it's
building
purpose
and the
then.
dishwasher came with the building. That's what they tell me anyhow.
Okay.
It did
This
well.
is a much smaller unit.
Is it?
Yes, because we don't wash dishes and trays and silverware and all of that. This unit will actually be in the kitchen area. They do wash trays now and the pots and pans. So,
Are you gonna volunteer to do that? Or-
Why not? Sure. Yeah.
All right, do I hear a motion to purchase the CHS dishwasher, making the replacement?
I'll make that motion, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Boyd. How about a second?
Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. Spurlock. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Okay, we have a resolution on the complaint, Dr. Hodges.
Board, at your table this evening, I think I had given this to you before, but just in case I hadn't, gave you a copy of a press release from Bose McKinney and Evans describing a suit against the federal government that the state of Indiana has filed regarding the Affordable Health Care Act. And in that press release, I believe there were 15 school corporations that had signed on to that complaint. Since that time, there have been about 9 additional school corporations that have signed on. And the last I talked to Jim Hamilton, who is the attorney for the East Central Indiana School Trust, there's about 10 other school corporations thinking about joining that suit. In your board packet, there is a resolution that has been prepared by Mr. Hamilton that would make Fayette County School Corporation a part of that suit if you would so choose to do that. Probably in a nutshell, one of the things that we're looking at, public schools have been treated differently than other employers when it comes to how you calculate hours for employees. As you're well aware, we have a number of employees that were working over 30 hours that we reduced to less than 30 hours because of the penalties associated with the Affordable Health Care Act or the requirement to provide coverage for that. And as we have said, it really was cost prohibitive for us to do that. This is asking that schools be exempt from that piece, as well as part of the suit deals with the who sponsors the what I want to call those, the exchange, the health exchanges, whether they're sponsored by the state or whether they're sponsored by the federal government. And the law talks about state-sponsored ones and talking about subsidies for people who sign up, but those that are established by the federal government, the law is silent as to whether or not subsidies are a part of that. And so that's part of what the suit is about. Why would we entertain being part of that? As I said before, it talks about the employees that we reduced hours for. If they're successful in the suit, we would be able to restore those hours and not be subject to the penalties associated as they currently are. Now let me quickly say that this is going to take a long time for this suit to go through. It's not something that in January we'll say, okay, this is what we're going to do. But that's the basis for the suit. And so we've had conversation about that, and so we've got the resolution prepared for you and be happy to try to answer questions that you have and whatever your pleasure is as far as moving forward is concerned.
I think the point that we need to bring forth is the background feeling of this is the effect that it's having on our children.
Correct.
Taking away the aides and those people that assist and help children.
Correct.
Okay.
And the other thing that I think is important to say publicly is Bose McKinney and Evans has taken this on. There will be no cost associated with this to the school corporation. We're just signing on and being a part of it. It won't cost any local taxpayer dollars for us to be a part of this suit.
Do you have any questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none then, do I hear a motion that, how do I want to say this, that we go along with this
That you
resolution?
you adopt this board resolution to join the suit.
I'll make a motion to join the suit, adopt the resolution.
Okay, Mr. Spurlock, thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Our discussion item this evening is the A&F grades for Fayette County School Corporation Dr. Reekie?
Thank you, Mr. Burchett, members of the board. At this time, we still do not have our letter grade from the bed based on the spring ISTEP scores. We are now given a date of November 22nd. What they are doing differently this year is when the appeals were made for the individual student scores, Superintendent Ritz is wanting to include those into the calculations before giving the schools the letter grade. So that is taking a little bit longer. So hopefully by November 22nd, we will have the letter grade, and then we hope to take the next week reevaluating the teachers' evaluations that were completed last May and June, and try to wrap up last year. So hopefully in the December board meeting, we will have more of a affirmative of where we stand in the ISTEP world.
Okay. Do you
Any
have any
questions?
additional comments?
No, it's just really unfortunate that the test was given last April.
March and April.
March and April, and here we are, 11, 12, 13. Isn't that an interesting day? But here we are in the middle of November, and we're still waiting on those results. And what's significant this year, more so than any other year, is we cannot complete certified evaluations until we have these letter grades and the growth data. And so everything's kind of on hold on that until we hear from that. There is a state Board of Education meeting, is it tomorrow, sometime this week?
Yes.
There are some reports that they may issue some preliminary grades, but if you've been following along in the news, you'll know that Linda Ritz and the State Board and others are not playing well with others, and so we'll see what happens. I hate to make a prediction. Everything that is supposed to happen has been delayed. So
Does that affect our teachers?
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about this last night at our Rise Hour meeting as we looked at some of our teachers. I'm not sure if it's all of them, but some of our ISTEP grade teachers, as much as 35% of their overall grade is tied to the results of this. Am I misspeaking or not?
All teachers are tied to the A to F by 5%, and then there's an additional 4th grade to 8th grade ISTEP, language arts and mathematics, that are another 35% tied to their overall evaluation, and that's significant.
It is significant, and we're on hold.
Can I share with them the news thing I just heard? Was just telling Dr. Hodges, I was watching Channel 8 News before I came in, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but Ball State has done a survey of people in Indiana, and it was interesting. This one was about the AF grading system, and 51% of the public goes along with this A&F grading system. 35 think we ought to use something different, and 15 they just don't know. So I thought that was kind of timely, kind of interesting, but at the same time I think it would be good for you to say what you said.
Well,
too.
I think the measures that we've used before, the wording was very confusing to the public, and the public thinks they understand what an A is and what a B is and what a C is, and so they are much more familiar with that. The issue is what makes up that grade, and that's been the contentious part of this all the way through, is that the current measures are flawed, in the opinion of many educators, in the way that that's calculated. And can we get to a point where we can all agree these are the critical pieces, this is the appropriate way to put those together, and then let's talk about where we're at. The model is similar to the one used in Florida, I think, but the Florida A to F, the number of B's and F's across the state, I want to say are less than 10%, but when you get to the state of Indiana, it's a much higher percentage of D's and F's. But when you look at the overall performance of Indiana compared to Florida, we outperform them. So are these measures really appropriate? That's where the debate comes in. The General Assembly recognized last year as they went through, the current measures were flawed. They weren't appropriate because they challenged the Department of Ed that by November 15th we'd have a new plan in place. So if they were really satisfied with the old plan, they wouldn't tell us to develop or tell them to develop a new plan. Yet they're still holding our feet to the fire and using the metrics from the old system. So it's a confusing time, and it's unfortunate when you're trying to establish credibility and communicate with parents the kind of job your local school is doing. There's just a lot of things going on in the background that I think cloud the issue. That's unfortunate. but that's where we are.
Okay, this is just a discussion item, so there's no action to be taken. So
That's good, because there really wasn't any action.
Be done. All right, do we have any public comments about anything? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on into the report items. Superintendent's discussion group reports, principals, directors' reports, Director of Personnel report.
Just one item, Mr. Burchett, we began today looking at a meeting with our individually and in small groups with all of our new teachers, see how they're getting along, and also their mentors. This is something we do each year, and make sure they're getting along, provide any support that's necessary, kind of look at forms and things that need to be completed by the end of year 2 for the teachers that are in their second year. It's called the IMAP, Program Indiana Mentoring and Assessment Program. So this gives us an idea as to how we're coming along, and if there's any support, additional support needed, we look at that and we make sure that those teachers are progressing right along. Gets me out of the building, which is great, and gets me into the buildings, which is wonderful. And it's also a goal of mine this year to make sure that a minimum of 85% of all of our teachers in the first or second year are highly effective or effective. So got some stakeholder in that, as well as working with our principals and collaborating to make sure our teachers are successful. So that's to be over the next 30 to 40 days. And that's all I have tonight, Mr. Burchett.
Thank you. Director of Finance report.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett. I'll just thank you for the support of the dishwasher project at the high school, so we can get that completed over Christmas, and that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Dr. Reiki.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett. I just wanted to give a kudos and appreciation for the high school staff, Connersville High School staff. They've gone through a rigorous process in preparing for the advanced ed accreditation, and they're in the middle of it right now. It'll conclude tomorrow, and having personally been through that before, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of hands are in that, a lot of preparation, and accreditation is very important to us. It's important to the community, and we're just grateful for the efforts that they put forth and willing to do all the paperwork and the conversations, because we know they're a great school and we want them to get those accolades. So just a thank you to all of the staff and the students for the high school.
How often is that done?
How often is that done?
Yes.
Every 5 years. I believe that's right, Randy. It's every 5 years, so it's been a while, and the process has changed since the last time they've gone through it. They've even changed the name. It was NCAA accreditation before, and they've kind of merged with advanced ed, and now they're advanced ed. They've gone from 7 standards to 5 standards, but they're really all the same standards, just rewritten, and the work is just as much. So it'll be a wonderful process, and we'll learn from it because there's a lot of feedback, interviews. Some of you participated this afternoon, and they take that and they'll come back with the report, and the report is also good information for us to grow and to give us validation on those things that we're doing well.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hodges, Superintendent's report.
Just to piggyback on what Kathy had to say, I want to thank board members that were able to come over this afternoon and meet with the committee that's evaluating the high school. That your participation was much appreciated, and I want to commend Janie. We're in the middle of an audit, state board's here, and she's probably as relaxed as any treasurer I've ever worked with before, so isn't that amazing? But I'm sure everything's going to be in excellent shape because she does a great job keeping things together. So that's really all I have this evening. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we move into the good of the cause. Does anyone have a comment they'd like to make?
Seemed like, did I not read in the paper where Linda Ritz was going to be at Franklin County School for a meeting sometime in the next week or two?
I don't
Tomorrow evening, actually.
Tomorrow evening? Okay. We may want to take the opportunity to have her that close to go share our concerns.
Barb, where are they doing that? Do you recall?
It's in Brookville. I have the address at school. I don't have it with me.
So it is at high school?
No, it's in Brookville. I can send you the address.
Okay.
But I don't have it with me right now. But it's at 7:30 tomorrow evening in Brookville.
Okay. Okay, I would just like to say that I thought some of the schools just did a terrific job with their Veterans Day programs, and I know I was at one of them especially, and you know, I know it's a day late, but I will say on behalf of the school corporation that we do appreciate our veterans, and having stood in Arlington Cemetery on several occasions with the crazy students and to see thousands upon thousands of those white tombstones, and I've just often wondered how many gallons of tears have been shed there by parents and children and wives of the sacrifice that those guys have done for you and for me, for our country, and for our future. And just again, thank you to each one of them. With that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, do I hear a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And the meeting is adjourned.